genres are both constraining and enabling. Now, one of the things that I wanted when I was writing this book is it was very important to me that this was a book that was faithful to crime, that like somebody who was interested in crime, who read a crime novel, would not feel like this is some outsider who doesn't get the rules, who doesn't play fair, who, like I want it to be completely respectful and have total fidelity to that paradigm. And so you're quite right. It does, I can't magic them out of a difficult situation. I can't, you don't have the recourse to that sort of thing. But at the same time, you have other things that are potentialities. Like I know a lot of readers who, with the best will in the world, without any snobbery, simply cannot proceed with a book once they've had too much of a strong eruption of the fantastic. It just brings down a portcullis in their mind. And it's not a snobbery, it's just a kind of affective reaction. And this book doesn't have that. Like a lot of, I would be happy to give this book to someone who would never read one of my other books and say, you might like this, And so it also offers you sort of possibilities. You're quite right. It is different, and so that brings new challenges and opportunities. I sound like a corporate, like I'm giving a corporate speech, but it's just more. It's more interesting to. It would be very dull to always do the same thing, So it didn't feel constraining at all. It was because this was the paradigm I was in all the way through, I guess.
Not at all, even with the linguistic restraints. You don't have the arcane or the Baroque words that you have in the bas-alg books, but you do have the invented language. I particularly liked
the Doppelgang.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, there's always a few neologisms because I like neologism and I like inventing language. But it doesn't. To take the logic of your position to the logic of your question, I should say, to an extreme, it's kind of like saying, if you think about, if the earlier books are more obviously sort of formally inspired by someone like Lovecraft, and this one is much more obviously inspired by someone like Chandler. It doesn't really make any sense to sort of say that Chandler is a constraint whereas Lovecraft is an enabler. Okay. It's just a different paradigm, and there's a certain kind of pleasure you can get from the terse but well placed phrase that you can't get from the incredibly florid, enjoyable paragraph long description, and vice versa.
I think you confused the terms of my question here, and I think I'm applying it directly not to you, not to individual authors, because, here you are, you're playing with different genres, you're going to approach each one with a different voice, with a different set of tools, a different set of limitations, so that's why I bring up this question. Mm-hmm. Do you, China, when you go ahead? It sounds like you don't, but I'm curious if you're going to alter your voice in some manner, whether it be YA or in this, a detective novel, you're going to probably fundamentally do a few things in advance to prepare yourself for writing. That's what I'm trying to sort of get at here.
I see. Well, all I really, at a conscious level, all I really did was read a lot of stuff. I didn't sort of, sit down and write a paragraph and then try and pare out every third word or whatever. There was not... Like, the first draft of this book was not 800 pages, which I then had to sort of pare down. So at a conscious level, basically the preparation is about reading. Mm-hmm. And it's just about reading and about channeling certain types of traditions. I have a very strong sense of tradition. Sure. I have a very strong sense of kind of literary traditions and stuff. So it's about channeling and learning about and situating yourself within that tradition. And I'm sure that's having all kind of ramifications for the writing itself, but that's going on behind my own... my own back, as it were.
Well, this is interesting because the question is how much do you have to read before you are inside a particular voice, and when do you shake off that influence? Because, you can't necessarily just be a ventriloquist. You have to find your own particular subconscious, intuitive take on presenting particular... and in this case, I would say it's totally different. So where do you start with influence and where do you stop?
I know some writers who don't read when they're writing because they're very concerned about sort of inadvertently picking up tics and stuff, and I get that, but I don't feel like that myself, largely because I think the search for originality is largely chimerical. I think it's, we are all, the kind of mucky aggregates of all of our influences, and, hopefully we kind of mulch those down into a kind of soup that is distinctly different from all of its component parts, but is also absolutely wouldn't exist without those component parts. So I mean, in a way, I think you're asking me to think about things which go on subconsciously, so it's very difficult to answer, but at a conscious level, like I kind of felt quite quickly, I would say within about 3 weeks of starting to write this, that I had the voice, and I'd spent a few months beforehand sort of steeping myself in crime. But then the thing I'm writing at the moment, for example, because it's a very, very different setting, it's closer in tradition to the Perdido Scar type stuff. Is written totally differently, has a totally different voice, and there doesn't feel like a kind of violent paradigm shift in my head. In fact, for a fair amount of the time, I was writing the two simultaneously, and it didn't feel like a huge conceptual break. It's because I think if you're enjoying writing something, you're so strongly within that voice at the time it's going on that hopefully up to a certain point you can trust yourself to be doing it, as I say, without thinking about it.
But if you're writing two books at the same time, that's two different forms of momentum that you have to make.
Yes.
How do you manage
that's an interesting question. I think probably every writer has a different sort of irreducible unit of writing time. Like some people can write a blog post for 2 hours in the morning, and then a short story in the afternoon, and then a chapter of their novel in the evening. Now, I can't do that. I admire the hell out of it, but I can't do it. For me, the smallest kind of unit of writing focus is probably 10 days. And so, I would get into a particular project and a particular voice for, a couple of days, and then I would focus really hard for a week or 10 days, and then I might get out of that and then shift to a different project. And this wouldn't just be two different fiction books. It would be if I was writing a non-fiction essay or an academic essay or a newspaper article or whatever, that would roughly be the kind of the atom of, Mieville temporal writing